10 years ago, my father told me art was a waste of time, and today, I bought his company with the empire I built on it. They didn't just underestimate me. They erased me. To them, I was Elena Carter, the black sheep, the failure, the girl who traded a business dynasty for a sketchbook and a dream. They never saw Elena Blackwood coming. Never imagined the disappointment they mocked over Thanksgiving dinners would be the one signing their checks, holding their legacy in her hands like a trophy they didn't know they'd lost. Tomorrow, I'd walk into their boardroom and tear their world apart. But tonight, I'd let them have their last laugh at the Carter family reunion, a celebration of their success, where my name was just a punchline they'd rehearsed for a decade. I adjusted the plain black dress in the mirror of my penthouse suite, a dull, shapeless thing I kept just for them, a costume to match their low expectations. On the desk behind me sat a cheap, outdated MacBook, its screen flickering with half-finished digital sketches. A decoy. Nothing too impressive. Nothing that hinted at Obsidian Studios, the fastest-growing digital empire in the country, my empire, forged from the ashes of their rejection. My phone buzzed. Jarek, my CEO. Contracts are locked. Carter Innovations board approved the sale. They still don't know it's us. The edges of my lips twitched into a smile. 10 years of swallowing their pity while I clawed my way up. 10 years of pretending to be the starving artist they wanted me to be. They had no clue. And tomorrow, they'd choke on it. The drive to the Hamptons was a slow descent, every mile pulling me back to the version of myself they'd invented, the girl who threw it all away. Growing up Carter meant one thing: business or nothing. My father, Richard Carter, had turned a scrappy 80s software startup into Carter Innovations, a Fortune 500 giant. Power clung to him like cigar smoke, thick, suffocating, always there. My sister Victoria, Harvard MBA and CEO by 30, was his perfect echo: tailored suits, crossed arms, and a smirk that said she'd never lose. And me? I liked to draw. Art isn't a career, Elena, my father said the night I picked my major. We were at the dining table, a crystal chandelier casting cold light on his untouched steak, the air heavy with his cologne. His voice was steady, but his disappointment cut like a blade through bone. It's a hobby, a distraction. Empires aren't built on doodles. Victoria, sipping her Pinot Noir across from me, added, "You're throwing your life away," her tone smug, like she'd just handed me a life lesson instead of a dagger. My mother dabbed her eyes with a linen napkin, whispering, "Oh, Elena," as if I'd confessed to running away with a cult instead of choosing animation school. I was 19, drowning in a room of wealth I'd never touch, not because I couldn't, but because I wouldn't bend to their rules. They thought I'd picked a dead-end road, a one-way ticket to nowhere. They didn't know I'd already started paving my own. It started small, a student film competition, $5,000 and a handshake from a professor with coffee-stained teeth and a crooked tie. My family didn't care. To them, it was a participation ribbon, not a paycheck. But to me, it was a spark in the dark. I cashed the check and told myself, if they won't let you in the front door, build your own damn house. I scoured Craigslist for a scratched-up Wacom tablet, its stylus worn but alive, and leased a one-room office above a Brooklyn sandwich shop that smelled like pastrami and despair. The walls were stained, the floor creaked, and the window stuck halfway open, but it was mine. I posted a job listing on a sketchy forum. 2 freelance artists, no experience, just hunger. Mia showed up first. Pink hair, chipped tooth, portfolio spilling out of a ripped backpack, her eyes bright with defiance. Jay came next, lanky, quiet, sold his Xbox to buy software, his hands trembling as he showed me his work. We ate $1 ramen from a dented microwave, the kind that buzzed like it might explode, and worked until the streetlights flickered off and the city went quiet. Our first client, a dental supply company, needed a training video for a surgical tool. I stayed up 2 nights sketching a storyboard with soul, not just specs, something that didn't just teach, but felt. My hands cramped, my vision blurred, but I pushed through. They loved it. Wired $800 the next day. Referred us to 3 more clients before the week was out. I framed that check, Not the prize one, but the $800. Hung it on the wall next to a buzzing fluorescent bulb that flickered like a heartbeat. A small win. Proof I wasn't crazy, proof I could grow something from nothing. 6 months in, we hit a wall. A client stiffed us. $2,000 gone, no lawyer to chase it. Rent was overdue, and Mia was crashing on the office couch, her duffel bag spilling socks and wrinkled tees. I could have called home, swallowed my pride, heard my father's "I told you so" through the line, his voice dripping with that smug certainty I'd failed. Instead, I locked myself in the office, coffee cold in a chipped mug, scouring corporate websites for cracks in their armor. That's when it clicked. They didn't want animation. They needed stories. Their training videos were trash, flat graphics, droning voiceovers, zero impact. Employees zoned out, retention tanked, and they didn't even know why. I rewrote our pitch, less cartoons, more emotional ROI. A promise to make their people feel the message, not just hear it. Next morning, I cold called a mid-tier tech firm, voice hoarse from no sleep, hands shaking as I gripped the phone. "Your training sucks," I said, blunt as a brick. "I can fix it." The VP laughed, a dry, skeptical chuckle, but he gave me 10 minutes. I pitched like my life depended on it, no notes, just instinct. 2 weeks later, we delivered a sleek explainer that tripled their onboarding stats, numbers they couldn't ignore. They paid $10,000 upfront, signed a 6-month deal, and asked when we could start the next one. Obsidian Studios was born that night. I sketched the logo on a grease-stained napkin, Obsidian, forged in fire, sharp and unbreakable. Like me. I dropped Carter, signed everything as Elena Blackwood, my middle name and my mother's maiden, the only piece of her I didn't resent. Another win. Small, but it cracked the earth open. Year 2, we were drowning, 15 employees in a loft with 1 bathroom, a coffee maker that sparked when you plugged it in, and a landlord who pounded the door for late rent. I hadn't slept in days, juggling payroll and pitches, my eyes burning from screen glare, my back aching from a cheap chair. Then a Fortune 100 client called, an aerospace giant needing a product launch video for a new jet engine. I thought it was a prank. My finger hovered over the end call button, heart slamming against my ribs, but the voice on the other end was crisp, no nonsense. "We need this fast. Can you handle it?" "Yes." I lied, throat dry. I had no pitch, no plan, just a team stretched thin, and a gut telling me not to back down. I pulled an all-nighter, digging through their specs, sketching a concept that felt like flight, bold, soaring, alive. Next day, I showed them a rough cut from a smaller gig, sold it as Vision, my voice steady despite the sweat on my palms. They bid $50,000, the biggest check we'd ever seen, direct deposit hitting like a thunderclap. I didn't celebrate. I hired 5 more people, animators, a sound guy, a writer who smoked too much but wrote like a poet, moved us to a real office with windows that opened and a view of the East River, and bought a couch that didn't smell like regret. That night, I stood alone in the new space, the city humming below, lights reflecting off the water. My hands shook as I pinned the contract to the wall next to that first $800 check, the paper curling at the edges, but solid as stone. A win. Not loud, but it roared in my chest. Year 5, Obsidian was a name, tech, finance, healthcare, even a government contract for a training series that went viral among bureaucrats. I'd scrubbed every trace of Carter, built a persona they'd never tie to the failure back home. But the mask took work, a constant tightrope walk. Thanksgiving 3 years ago, at the Carter estate, Victoria smirked across the table, her fork poised over a slice of turkey. "Still doodling, Elena?" My father grunted. "She'll grow out of it," his eyes fixed on his scotch. Mom sighed. If only she'd listened. Her voice soft but laced with pity. The room laughed. Cousins, aunts, uncles. A chorus of condescension. I could have told them about the multi-million-dollar deals, the awards piling up in my office, the clients whose names they bragged about knowing at their golf clubs. Instead, I nodded, said, "Still trying," and let them chuckle into their wine glasses. Later, alone in my Honda parked down the street, I pulled up a client email. Obsidian's campaign just hit 10 million views. Bonus incoming, $75,000. I smiled, locked the phone, and drove back to my shoebox apartment, the one in a building I'd bought cash last year, a brick and glass tower they'd never suspect I owned. A quiet win. Bitter as hell, but sweeter for it. Year 6, I broke. It started with Mia, my first hire, my right hand, the one who'd slept on that ratty couch with me in the early days. We'd built Obsidian together, her wild energy balancing my focus. But when a rival studio offered her a deal, equity, a title, a paycheck triple what I could afford, she took it. Didn't even tell me to my face. Left a note on my desk, scribbled on a post-it. Sorry, I need this. By the time I found it, she'd cleaned out her station, her sketches, her coffee mug, her chaos gone. That same week, our latest video hit 10 million views, a corporate campaign that redefined a tech giant's brand. The client called it genius, wired a $2 million bonus, and toasted us over Zoom. I should have been on top of the world. Instead, I sat alone in my office, the city dark beyond the glass, the screen's glow the only light. No team celebration. Everyone had gone home. No family to call, they didn't even know what I did. No Mia to crack a beer with and laugh about the old days. Just me, a bottle of cheap whiskey, and a wall of framed contracts that suddenly felt like tombstones. I poured a shot, then another, the burn doing nothing to fill the hole. The numbers on my phone, 10 million, stared back, mocking me. All that work, all those years, and who knew? Who cared? I'd built an empire no one saw, a name no one tied to me. My hands shook as I scrolled through my contacts, empty except for clients and employees, no friends, no anchors. I stopped on Mom's number, thumb hovering, imagining her voice. Oh, Elena, still playing with drawings? The tears came then, hot and fast, spilling onto my desk. I dropped the phone, buried my face in my hands, and let it out, sobs that echoed off the walls, raw and ugly. I'd won, hadn't I? So, why did it feel like losing? Why did it feel like I was still that girl under the chandelier, begging for a scrap of pride? I don't know how long I sat there, the whiskey bottle half empty, my throat raw. But somewhere in the dark, I heard my own voice, small, cracked, but mine. You're enough. I wiped my face, stood on shaky legs, and opened my laptop. Typed an email to the team. New project tomorrow. We're not done. Sent it. Then I pinned the $2 million contract to the wall, right next to Mia's empty space. I wasn't done. Not yet. Year 7, Carter Innovations announced their digital pivot, a press release with Victoria's smug photo splashed across Forbes, touting plans for animated training content. My territory. I could have let it slide, watched them stumble into a world I'd mastered, their amateur attempts crashing and burning. But after that night, I didn't play defense, I played to win. I called Derek, my voice low, steady. Find me a way in. He dug shell companies, silent bids, late-night calls to lawyers who owed me favors. 2 months later, Blackwood Acquisitions, a front I'd buried under layers of paperwork, offered a deal they couldn't refuse. Cash injection, innovation pipeline, market reach they'd never achieve alone. They bit, thinking it was a lifeline, their boardroom buzzing with arrogance as they signed. I signed the papers in my office, ink still wet as I watched the city's skyline glow through floor-to-ceiling windows. The pen felt heavy, final. A win. Not the endgame, but the trap snapping shut. They didn't know who held the other end of the rope. Year 8, I almost broke again. A major client pulled out. $2 million lost overnight. A gut punch that left us scrambling. The team looked to me, eyes wide, waiting for a plan. I didn't have one. For the first time since Mia, I felt the weight, the sleepless nights, the loans I'd taken, the mask I'd worn too long. I locked myself in my office, the city dark outside, and stared at that wall of contracts, Mia's absence still a ghost in the room. I could have quit, sold out, walked away. Instead, I opened my laptop, pulled up every contact I'd ever made, and sent 47 emails by dawn, Pitches, please, promises. 3 days later, a biotech firm bid a $3 million contract for a campaign that would redefine their brand. We delivered, and they paid early, the deposit hitting like a lifeline. I pinned that contract next to the others, the wall a patchwork of victories over ruin. A win, born from ash, but brighter for it. I parked 2 blocks from Victoria's Hamptons estate, my beat-up Honda fading into the dark while her driveway glittered with Teslas and Bentleys. The mansion loomed, sterile, bloated with money, the same place where she'd laughed when I said I might start a studio, her voice echoing off marble walls. Elena! My mother's voice floated over as I stepped inside, her air kiss missing my cheek by a mile. We thought you'd gotten lost. Traffic, I said, smoothing my dress, plus a last-minute sketch. Oh, she replied, her paws a knife through silk. Someone's paying for those now. Victoria swooped in, crimson gown screaming triumph, her heels clicking like a metronome. Elena! So glad you could break from your doodles. Always room for family, I said, forcing a smile that felt like glass. She eyed me, head to toe. You look cozy. Your dress is stunning, I countered. Big news. She beamed, chin high. Closed a massive deal. Carter Innovations bought out a competitor. We're jumping into digital, animation, training videos. Very cutting edge. We'll hire pros for the art part, of course. My jaw clenched, but I stayed cool. Ambitious. Cousin Jeremy slid up, whiskey sloshing in his glass. Still doing cartoons, Elena? My fun's got admin gigs if you want real work, great dental. Thanks, I said, swallowing shards. I'll pass. Victoria leaned in, voice syrupy. With the company growing, we could toss you a junior creative role. Entry level. Nothing hard. A paycheck, though. A lifeline they thought I'd grab, with both hands. I'll think about it, I said, snagging a champagne flute from a passing tray. The room buzzed with their usual game. Who had the fattest portfolio, the shiniest kid, the most aggressive stock split? My name only came up for laughs, a side dish to their main course of self-congratulation. I drifted past the photo wall. Victoria at Harvard, Victoria on Forbes, me stuck at high school grad, my cap crooked, my smile forced. My father stood by the fireplace, scotch in hand, the amber liquid catching the light. Elena, he sighed, that heavy tone he reserved just for me. 32. Still chasing fantasies. When do you grow up? I've built something, I said quietly, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. He chuckled, cold and hollow. Sure. Next you'll ask for a loan to keep the lights on. It burned hotter than it should have. A slow bleed. Every jab, every smirk, every kind offer piling up like bricks on my spine. I stood by the window as the sun sank below the manicured hedges, their laughter echoing behind me, a sound I'd never been part of. Elena's always been different, Victoria said, her voice slicing through the hum. Some people just aren't built for success. My fingers tightened around the champagne flute, the glass cool against my skin. My phone buzzed. Derek. 9 a.m. boardroom confirmed. They're clueless. 14 hours. That's all I needed. Back in the Honda. Engine off. I sat in the dark, the estate's lights fading behind me. My phone glowed, Mom. Why didn't you tell us? I stared at it, my hand shaking, the screen's light cutting through the shadows. For a second, I saw the old me, the kid who craved their approval, who'd have spilled every secret just for a nod. The sleepless nights, the wins, the empire I'd built to shove in their smug faces. My thumb hovered over her name, the urge clawing at me. Then I caught my reflection in the windshield, still the girl they pitted, still the shadow they'd cast. No, I whispered, dropping the phone onto the passenger seat. It clattered against a crumpled coffee cup, the sound sharp and final. I didn't need their validation. Not anymore. I started the car, watched the Hamptons shrink in the rear view, and felt the weight lift, a chain snapping, link by link. A small win, not in their eyes but in mine, and that was enough. The elevator ride to Carter Innovation's top floor was a held breath, the hum of the motor steadying my pulse. My Chanel suit hugged me like armor, hairpin tight with surgical precision. No trace of the cozy Elena they knew. Derek stood beside me, tie crisp, his silence a quiet vote of confidence. "Ready, Miss Blackwood?" "Let's end it," I said, my voice steel. The doors slid open with a soft chime. The boardroom hummed, my father at the head, scotch in hand, the glass sweating against his palm. Victoria mid-pitch about their strategic buyer, her voice smooth as polished marble. "Doubling productivity by Q3, she said, all charisma and certainty, gesturing to a sleek PowerPoint slide. "Actually," I cut in, stepping forward, my heels clicking on the hardwood, "there's a new agenda." Silence crashed like a dropped glass. Victoria spun, jaw slackening, her perfect poise cracking. "Elena?" My father's eyes narrowed, his grip tightening on the scotch. "What the hell are you doing here?" Derek stepped forward, calm as a shadow. "Miss Blackwood called this meeting." Victoria laughed, sharp and brittle, a sound that bounced off the walls. "This is a boardroom, not a family picnic." I set my leather briefcase on the table, the thud deliberate, cool as ice. "I'm aware. As majority shareholder of Carter Innovations, I thought I'd introduce myself properly." I opened the case, pulled out the contracts. Thick, legal-bound stacks, the ink of victory. Derek distributed them down the line, acquisition papers, ownership terms, signed and sealed. My father stared at his copy, unblinking, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. "Obsidian Studios, this is you?" "Yes," I said, my voice cutting through the room. "Elena Blackwood, founder and CEO. The artist you mocked. The daughter you dismissed. The woman who now owns this table, this company, and every shred of your so-called legacy. This is a joke." Victoria slammed the table, papers scattering like leaves in a storm, her voice rising to a near shriek. "You? You can't even balance a checkbook, Elena." I slid her contract across the polished wood, my eyes locked on hers. "Funny. I balanced yours well enough to buy it." "You're no daughter of mine," my father hissed, his chair scraping as he stood, the sound harsh against the silence, his face red with fury. "Good," I shot back, meeting his glare without flinching, my pulse steady. "I'm not here as your daughter. I'm your boss." Gasps ricocheted down the table. A pen hit the floor, rolling under a chair. Victoria's voice cracked, her hands trembling as she clutched the contract. "You can't." "I did," I said, tapping my watch with a single finger. "Press release in 3, 2. My phone lit up, the screen flashing. "Breaking news. Obsidian Studios acquires Carter Innovations. Elena Blackwood steps into spotlight." My father sank back into his chair, face ashen, the scotch forgotten in his hand. Victoria's hands shook, her eyes darting from the paper to me, searching for a way out that didn't exist. "I'm restructuring," I continued, my tone flat, final. "Victoria, your CEO role ends today. Apply for creative if you want a seat, entry-level, of course. Father, you're an advisor until retirement. Ceremonial, not functional." "You'll regret this," she whispered, her voice a ghost of its former strength. "Doubt it," I said, snapping my briefcase shut with a click that echoed. "Le Bernardine tonight. Merger dinner. Be there or don't. Your call." I walked out, their silence roaring louder than any applause, the weight of their stares burning holes in my back. Back in my penthouse, adrenaline still buzzed under my skin, a live wire I couldn't shut off. The Phoenix Building, Obsidian's HQ, gleamed below, my name carved in stone they'd never bothered to notice. I poured my father's scotch into a crystal tumbler, the same brand he'd sipped when he offered me pity jobs over the years, the amber liquid catching the city lights. My phone exploded. "Jeremy. Collab? Anne Evelyn. So proud. Victoria. We need to talk. Mom. Call me." I ignored them all. At Le Bernardine, cameras flashed like lightning, the room thick with journalists and suits. I raised my glass, the champagne cold against my fingers. To redefining success, I said, my eyes locking on Victoria's stone face across the room, her crimson gown dulled by defeat. The crowd clapped, polite at first, then real, the sound swelling like a wave. A win. Not theirs.
Mine.
Later, Victoria cornered me near the bar, her heels clicking softly on the marble, her presence smaller than I'd ever seen. Not in stature, but in spirit, her unshakable armor cracked wide open. "Why hide it?" she asked, her voice quiet, almost broken. I studied her, the sister who'd once been my shadow before she became my judge. "You wouldn't have believed me," I said, my tone even. "You'd have tried to control it, absorb it, make it fit your world. This was mine, built from scratch, not handed to me." "You're not my little sister anymore," she said, her eyes searching mine for something familiar. I stepped closer, voice low, steady. "I never was. You just didn't look close enough to see it." She froze, her breath catching, then turned and walked away, her silhouette fading into the crowd. I caught my reflection in the restaurant's glass wall. Not the girl they pitted, but the woman who'd won, her edges sharp as obsidian. A quiet win, but it cut deep. Back on my penthouse terrace, the city sprawled below, a sea of lights stretching to the horizon. I pulled my old sketchbook from a locked cabinet, frayed at the edges, its cover worn from years of hiding. Inside, my first doodle, a girl with a crown, sketched in shaky pencil lines. A note from my professor in faded ink. "Hide your mastery until the perfect reveal." Tonight was that moment. I tossed it into the fireplace, the pages curling as flames licked them up, the girl with the crown turning to ash. I raised my scotch to the blaze, the glass cool against my lips, the burn of the liquor sharp and clean. To the art they mocked, to the empire they missed. To me. Hey, if you loved this ride, family drama, jaw-dropping twists, and a badass rise from the ashes, hit that subscribe button. I'm dropping more stories like this, packed with grit and glory, and trust me, you won't want to miss what's next. Let's keep the fire burning. Join the crew.